I'm not sure if we were like super clear on what this is tonight. So either this is gonna be like the coolest book club meeting you've ever been to, or like the shittiest comedy show you've ever been to. Maybe both. We're gonna see. We're gonna find out together, guys. We're gonna find it together. This is a huge night for me. This is a huge night for the club. This is such an important place. This is such an important place to so many different people and to the city. And before I bring out the man of the hour and so many cool comics, so many incredible people who are here tonight to share their deepest, darkest secrets with all of you, I just want to take a couple of minutes to answer a question. Because a lot of people this week have asked me this question. And that question was, why did you write this book about Acme? And I'd like to finally answer that question. It's just the money. That's it. Just all that sick money I made. No, hot tip, if you want to go into writing and you want to make a lot of money, do not pick comedy as the thing that you cover. Right? Like the fairy porn books everybody's into right now. Those, you're going to make that money, but not the comedy stuff. No. So the quick version of why I wrote this book and why I write about comedy as a whole. The first time I ever came to this club was June 2007, because I just moved to Minnesota from Michigan. I was living in downtown. I knew nobody. I knew nothing. I mean, I was brand new. And I remember I saw an ad in City Pages, RIP. Oh man, I got an awe for City Pages. And it said, there was this club, and it was comedy. And I said, great, I want to go check it out. And so I came down here, and I'll never forget, because I walked in, and there was a couple that were just absolutely screaming at the managers at the front. And if there's one thing that's been consistent about this club over the 30 plus years, it's that the managers do not play. And keep that in mind tonight with your voices and your actions. But they were yelling because they got here too late, and I kept hearing them say, we have one ticket. We do not have room for you two. And I, having no friends, said, I will take that one ticket. And they gave it to me. And they let me in. So I came in, and I watched the show, and it was just the coolest experience. I'd seen comedy before. It's not like this was a brand new concept to me, but I'd never experienced it like I did that night. Being in this room, being around so many people who just wanted to have a good time, who wanted to feel like they were a part of it. It was just this incredible, intoxicating feel, and I felt like just a little bit like, hey, I'm a part of something. I kind of belong. And that was a cool feeling for me as somebody who was brand new and had never been anywhere in this city. So over time, I kept going after that. I came to the club, I saw shows. I had a very, very short, unfortunate attempt at being an open mic comic that it was mostly just me just doing Chris Rock jokes, if I'm being totally honest. It wasn't good. In hindsight, doing the voice was probably a mistake, but 2007 was a different time, it's fine. But the one thing I did know is I got to know these people, and I got to see these people, and I said, these comics, these people who are coming up here, they're so cool, they're so interesting. I want to get to know them. I want to know why they do this. And I started writing for City Pages, and I started writing for some other publications, and I said, I want to cover comedy. I want to talk about comedy. And so I started chatting with these comics. I started getting to know them, to interview them, to learn about them, and to tell their stories. And what I learned was that these comics that were coming on this stage every single week, not just the headliners that were coming to town. I'm talking about the people who were open micers, who were cutting their teeth here, the people who were cutting their teeth and really moving up, who were trying to make it to that next level of comedy. Like, they just had these cool stories, and they were such unique and interesting and kind of spooky sometimes people, but they were cool. And their stories deserved to be told, and they needed to be told. And I said, that's what I can do. That's how I can be a part of this whole world, is I can tell those stories. And along the way, I met a lot of wild personalities, and you're going to see a lot of them here tonight. But the one person who I thought was the most interesting, the most mysterious, also the spookiest, was Louis Lee. And yes, Louis Lee, I met him probably about 14 years ago, and I knew he owned the club, but I didn't realize just what an important part of this club he was, and just how important this club was to him. And over time, I got to know Louis. I got to see how important, not just the club, not just the business was, but how important the people were, how important the comics were, how important comedy as a whole was. And I said, man, this is a story that I want to tell someday. So few years ago, I came to Lewis after I wrote my first book. Funny thing about Minnesota, available out in the lobby after the show. I came to Lewis and I said, hey, I want to write a story about this club. I want to write the history of Acme Comedy Company. Is that okay? And he said, yeah, I don't care. Okay, some of you got tight on me. And here's the thing, if that extremely accurate and not racist at all Louis Lee impression was too much, like, buckle up, kiddos, because we got a long night. But, so he said, sure. And so I wrote an outline and I brought it to him and I said, Louis, here's what I want to write. Here's the book. And he looked at it and he said, you can do better. This is real. And it's funny because he was right. And the reason he was right was because I tried to write an outline that was a love story to Acme Comedy Company. And he took a look at that and said, that's not the history of Acme Comedy Company. It's not an infomercial. It's not a love story. It's a lot of struggle. It's a lot of personalities. It's a lot of dirt. There's a lot of things that went into this club to make it a success and to make him a success. And it's funny because I'd heard so many stories from comics about how Louis Lee, he'll push you to be more creative, to be better, to be funnier. But I'd never experienced that because I wasn't a comic. And this was the first time that I saw it. And I said, this is why this club has made it as far as it has. This is why Louis Lee is so important to this town. And to me, that is the most important, the best, and in my opinion, the most exciting Twin Cities comedy story that I've ever had the opportunity to tell. And so to answer the question, why did I write this book? Why did I write about comedy? I love comedy. I love everything about it. I love the people. I love the weirdness of shows. I love the fact that you can be in some place and you'll see something you'll never see again, no matter how many times somebody does the same material. It's all incredible to me, and I am so appreciative, not just of Louis, not just of the comics, but of every single person here and of everybody who is willing to come on a Wednesday night to hear me blab on about a book. So thank all of you for being here. All right, that's enough of me. I can't believe I'm about to do what I'm about to do. Ladies and gentlemen, first thing, are you ready to get the show started? I'll do my official, as the MC for the evening, I'll do my official duties. If you need to use the restrooms, they're outside near the box office. If you want to smoke, vape, or use other types of e-cigs, please do it outside. And most importantly, if you wanted to heckle a comedy show, if you've ever thought to yourself, I'm going to let the comics know what I think, this is like the worst night to ever do it. Because you could quite literally get banned for the rest of your life. On the spot. They have that power. So just think it through. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege, it is my honor, it is blowing my mind that I'm the one of all the comics who've ever been on the stage who gets to do this, to welcome to the stage for the first time, Acme Comedy Company owner, Louis Lee. He is soaking in the adulation. He is loving this guy. All right, so Louis would like to start tonight with a quick 10-minute set that he's been working on. So Louis, take it away. We have so much to talk about. I can't believe that we're going to do this tonight. We have so many stories, so many memories, so many things we're going to do. But, before we start bringing up some of our comics that we've talked about, we promised some special guests tonight. We promised some surprises. And, yes, Louis, you mean a ton to comedy, to Twin Cities comedy. Acme means so much to so many people, but it also means so much to the city of Minneapolis. And it means so much to the fact that you've been here for over 30 years, you've been an institution, you've created jobs, you've created laughs, you've done so much for so many people, and that's why, yes, go ahead, keep it going for Louis. We're gonna do this all night. And it's my pleasure and my honor to say that we are able tonight to fully recognize Acme Comedy Company and its contributions to this community. And to do so, it is my privilege and honor to welcome Mayor Jacob Fry.
So thank you, Patrick, for bringing this incredible story into writing. And can we give a huge round of applause to the legend over here, Louis Lee? Look, this is not every day that we get to honor such an extraordinary institution in the city of Minneapolis, run by such incredible people, doing what is no doubt like the most difficult profession, arguably, in the entire earth. But in honor of that, whereas Acme Comedy Club has been a pillar of the Minneapolis comedy community for over 30 years and has made a positive impact on stand-up comedy across the globe. And whereas owner Louis Lee opened Acme Comedy Club in 1991, driven by a mission to discovering and fostering local talent, spotlighting national comedians of all styles, and showcasing stand-up as a unique art form. And whereas, since its inception, Acme Comedy Company has offered a stage for countless comedians to develop their voices while challenging seasoned performers to push their creative boundaries. And whereas Acme has earned a reputation as one of the very best, the best comedy clubs in the country, and has served as a destination for national performers such as Robin Williams and Maria Bamford, as well as homegrown talents like Al Franken, Chad Daniels, Mary Mack, and Pete Lee. And whereas Acme has survived the test of time, serving as a temple for rich arts community in Minneapolis, as well as a cornerstone of the downtown economy, attracting thousands of visitors every single month. And whereas Acme's enduring owner, Louis Lee, has shown himself to be a testament to the spirit of our diverse and inclusive community, immigrating to Minneapolis from Hong Kong in the 1980s and finding professional, personal, and creative fulfillment thanks to our rich culture and incredibly strong community. And whereas, okay, it's a little more here, Acme and his owner, you know, I tried stand-up in college. Absolute disaster. And whereas the city of Minneapolis salutes the enduring legacy of Acme Comedy Company and owner Louis Lee, and is proud to recognize the club's pivotal role in shaping Minneapolis as a destination for diverse, creative, and unique stand-up comedy. Now, therefore, I, Jacob Fry, Mayor of the City of Minneapolis, do hereby proclaim March 26, 2025 as Acme Comedy Day in the City of Minneapolis.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Mayor Jacob Fry. We'll just keep that on up here. I wrote all that, so I made him do it. I don't care. He didn't say my name once. That's bullshit, but that's okay. Louis, have a seat. Let's chat. Well, what do you want to talk about? Louis, no, I need to ask you, first and foremost, does it feel weird being up here right now? Like, after all these years of being in this room and seeing so many people in this club, how does it feel to be on stage holding a microphone right now?
Sucks.
We should have rehearsed. I spent so much time on the proclamation, did not write Louis answers. Okay. No, but I gotta ask you, I mean, you came here in the 1970s, you didn't speak English. You immigrated to Minnesota. You didn't know, what the plan was. You didn't know where you were going to go. And now here you are, almost 40 years, well, I guess over 40 years later, and it's Acme Day in Minneapolis. You literally run the city today. I think that's how it works. I mean, how does that feel for you when you look back at that? I mean, I know you're not a guy who loves to reflect on history and to pat himself on the back, but I mean, how's that feel?
I don't know.
Sucks. All right. Well, I know. It's gonna be a long night, guys. It's gonna be a long night. All right. Well, let's jump into it because I know we have a lot of stuff we want to talk about here tonight. So, Lewis, first and foremost, you've been a part of this club since its inception. You are literally the person who started this, opened the doors. And it's been 30 plus years, and you finally decide, hey, let's tell this story. Let's let the people know the history of this. Why? Why is now the right time for it? When you look back, why was this the time to write that book?
Actually, when you came to me, I didn't like it. And seriously, I read your first book, and Acme was at the last part of it, and I liked the way it finished. It's okay, there's a beginning of the new era. And anything else after that, I thought I don't like to look back. I like to look forward. So I'm not the type that, well, come on, let's go back what you've done. I don't like that because, whatever happened already. So
you didn't like my book. Cool. Thank you. Okay. Going great. No, so for those, there's a lot of folks here who are familiar with you, familiar with the club. They can also read about you in the book, available in the lobby after the show. But take us back. I know that you initially came here from Hong Kong in the 70s. Mm-hmm. You came here with your siblings. And one really interesting thing, which you and I just talked about the other day, which I wasn't aware of, is, you came here because, really education opportunities and how different they were here than they were in Hong Kong. So how was the decision made that you were one of the siblings who was going to come to America as opposed to, continuing your education and staying in Hong Kong?
Well, because the system in Hong Kong in the 70s, if you're lucky, you're 1 out of 50 kids can make it all the way to college. And even though my family has tried very hard to put us all through pretty good school, and we were like the top 15, 20%, and by the time you get to grade 12, your chance to go to college, maybe 1 out of 10, and I wasn't that good. So they think that, well, you either get stuck or you get away and go to U.S., Canada, and give yourself a chance to go to college. And then by the time, I'm the 5th of the whole 8 kids in my family, and my brothers, my sister ahead of me, they were a lot better in school than me. And when it come to me, they look at me and say, no. And then happy part was my mother's sister, who lived in Chicago, married an American. So she told my mom that we should, the whole family, move here, so the rest of the kids can get a chance to go to college. So that's what my mother did, and of course, they didn't have much money, so they borrowed some and just have enough to get us here. And then when we get here, they pay the first month rent, they pay the first month car payment, everybody got $200, and then here you go. So, when I landed in Minnesota in August, it took me 2 weeks to get my first job, and then a month and a half later, I get into University of Minnesota. At that time, I was not good enough to go to the real college. They have general college at that time. So I was qualified to do that. And then, so I have to work so that I can pay my rent to my family. And then you go to school. And hopefully within a year or two, my English would be good enough to go to the regular college.
Sure. Also a ringing endorsement for the American education system. Not Hong Kong smart, but you can be America smart. I get that. So we'll let Tim Slagle riff on that a little bit later. Okay, so let's jump ahead a little bit. So I know you and I have talked about this. The first time you see stand-up comedy, though, I remember you talk about it in the book. You mentioned that you went to a club in town. You saw I believe it was the Minneapolis Comedy All-Stars. the first time you see stand-up comedy, I mean, this was the first time you'd ever seen it, right? On TV, anything? I mean, what's your first impression of comedy the first time that you see it in person?
I didn't even know that was what comedy was. And my girlfriend at the time that, well, we should try that. Because she knew I was trying to learn English. And I said, well, go to this. And I only got maybe half of it. But I saw the crowd was so good. And then I figure out I'm missing something. So that's why, throughout the year after that, we go to comedy show quite a bit after that.
Do you remember any of those comics? Who were some of the comics you actually really liked back then? Do you remember?
Yeah, because it was Louis Anderson, Jeff Cesario, the comedy all-star. Yeah. Those are 2 out of 5.
Yeah, Alex Cole, and I remember those
Alex
guys.
Cole, yeah. So Josh coming up, he'll know everybody.
Okay, great. So then, talk me through. So I'm gonna jump around. I'm gonna give a little bit of the background for people who don't know. You're working, like you said, you're working in restaurants. You've seen comedy. You're familiar with it. You're responsible for introducing comedy to a restaurant you worked at, the Mandarin Yen.
Yep.
And that's kind of your initial introduction to at least kind of peripherally being in the comedy world. And this is also the time that you meet a man named Scott Hansen, who was a huge deal in Twin Cities comedy. He was kind of the guy for Twin Cities comedy. When you started that, I mean, did you think to yourself, like, I really like being involved in this industry? Like, I really want to be a comedy guy for the rest of my life?
No, not at all. So, I met Scott, and then I introduced Scott to my boss, the owner of the restaurant, and I sat through all the meeting that they go back and forth, and I was sitting in the middle and said, okay, all I want is to get the comedy show into the restaurant because they're losing money every week hiring band and no cover charge. And you got 50, 40 people on a weekend. They buy 1, 2 drinks. And I look at the owners, you can't do this over and over again. You got to do something new. So all I want was talk the owner into, okay, they sell tickets, you sell drinks, and they don't get paid. He make money selling the ticket. So that's how it all started. And at that point, to me, my job is to make my boss company make money. That's it. It was not about anything else. And honestly, I didn't know what comedy really meant at that point. And when I started to meet the comics and knowing the story, the more I know, the more I said, no, not for me.
A ringing endorsement to the quality of character of stand-up comics. Okay, so I mean, but of those comics, yes, and we're going to talk to some of them here. Was there anybody when you're really getting involved and you're seeing those comics now from a little bit from the business side? Is there anybody who kind of shapes your opinion of this is the type of comedy that I like? This is what's interesting to me, or at this point, are you still just kind of like, this comedy thing is great? I mean, what's your opinion at that point?
At that time, I was 22, 23 years old, so I did not know anything about comedy. All I know is it's different from a band or top 40. It was on 494. And I thought, well, this is much better than anybody else offer up and down the strip at that point. So I kept telling my boss at that time, I said, look, you have something that nobody can touch. So back in my mind, what I really learned is if you want to survive in business, you have to come up something new, and then other people cannot easily copy. So actually, it's a lot more learning the business side of it than the artistic side of it.
Sure. So let's talk about the business side of it then, because to kind of flash forward a little bit, you do decide you leave the Mandarin Yen and you actually get into business with Scott Hansen, and you two get together and you open the Comedy Gallery, the big comedy gallery over in River Place. Mm-hmm. It's a huge deal. It's a huge success. At that point, yet? I mean, I know that you're still the restaurant guy. You're more involved in that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But are you more enamored with comedy at that point from a business side? Are you like, this is different, this has sustainability?
Actually, once we opened Comedy Gallery in 97, oh no, 87, that's the year the Twins won. So I get to know a lot of now everybody know they're big time comics. And I work with them and I know what they like behind the scene after the show. And I start to appreciate more and more. And of course, at the same time, I also know the ego part about the artist. And then when I start to know more about it, is that something for me you want to get into in the long run? I said no, because vodka and scotch doesn't talk back. And your steak doesn't talk back. So, I mean, I know, behind the scene sometimes get pretty ugly. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to a couple of the comics today and said, what happened to certain huge name comic today and how they were treated way back when they were nobody. So the more I get into it, the more I said, I'd much rather deal with something I can handle. So that's the whole thing, is learning something that I try to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, speaking of trying to avoid things, excellent segue. You and Scott, you guys are in business. The business is going well. You continue to kind of push the business forward. And then the accident happens. And I won't sit here and make everybody relive, and I won't make you relive every detail of it, but it's a pretty horrifying car accident that you get in. I mean, you said it yourself. I mean, they pretty much said, like, I don't think Lewis is going to be here much longer. I mean, how bad was that accident?
Oh, really bad. I was going 35W North to North Branch to go to the banker at that time, doing some business, and I was on a right-hand lane, and all of a sudden a semi truck go into my lane and just push me. My car, I was told, roll over 7 times. So, and I don't know anything until after the surgery, and people told me that I was in there for 8 hours. They pick up half of my ear from the road, sewed it back. My head was split in half. So I was told, they find my business card and call work that day, and then they told people that call his family, he's not going to make it. So they were, everybody rushed there, and I'm lucky.
And to spoil the ending, he's still here. So I mean, and there's a lot more detail, and I know it goes into it in the book, available out in the lobby after the show. But I mean, the other thing, which I think is worth pointing out here as we get to Acme, is that your family invested a lot of money. Like, they really believed in you as you're going through this venture into building up this comedy club. You're working with Scott. They're saying, kind of contrary to what you'd said up front about the education piece, they're like, Lewis he's worth it. Like, this is a guy who we know, he's worth our time, he's worth our money, we trust him, we believe in him. And then tragedy strikes, the car accident happens, and Scott Hansen, he unceremoniously, he screws you. He pushes you out. Let's not mince words. He screws you. He pushes you out. You lose all this money. I'll say it so you don't have to. You lose the money, and now you're broke. You owe money. Your family's believing in you. You owe their money. You don't necessarily have a direction. And the question is, where do you go next? So at that point, you said to me when we were writing this book, the one thing you knew you didn't want to do was be involved with comedy at that point. And my question for you is, was it comedy that you were really upset with? Was it Scott you were really upset with? I mean, what was it about just not being involved in comedy at that point? Was it just because it all kind of tied together? What made you feel that way?
Actually, when I started work with Scott in the mid-'80s, early 80s, when comedy started to take off. And as time goes on, comedy in the 80s, toward the end of 80s, it was huge. And I thought the way Scott run clubs is not going to last, because at that point, he owns 6 different rooms in the Twin Cities. And you count how many seats they have. Every weekend, you have to sell 4,000 seats. Think about the State Theater only sit 2,000. Across the street, the Alvin Theater, 2,400. So you combine those two together is 4,500. How many times you can sell every seat on the weekend? And then the way they run comedy club at that point, you sit down, you have 2 drinks minimum. And those days, even though it's in the 80s, it's still pretty expensive. And I know that it's not going to last. Just like in the early 80s when I went to Scott and go with my boss and say, okay, this is the future. By the late 80s, I thought, no, this is not going to last. And that's part of it to me, is that I'm going to stay away from it as far as I can, because it doesn't have any future, because you have too many rooms, not enough comics. So you're not giving people a good product. At the same time, you're treating your customers that I'm going to get your last time now. So consumer eventually is going to say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I can smell it's right toward the end. And at that point, by the time I get in here, the last thing I want to do is involve the comedy. And I know it might get another year or 2. And the way I look at it is, okay, we got a year or 2 to establish so that we have enough cash flow so we can move on. And if the comedy dies, it dies, and I'll find something else and put it in this room. So more of it is not about people. It's about the way people run business, and you can smell it's going to the end of it, because it's just a bunch of really bad people running it. You know, personally, when I disagree with people who run business, I just say, I don't want to deal with it. That's all.
Sure. And after all that, you're like, you know what? Let's do a comedy club again. Why not? And I know we have a lot of guests to get to, so I want to ask one more question, then I'm going to roll into it. But you said something to me very recently that I thought was very interesting, because I said, okay, after all that, why then? You know, you had the option to buy into other bars, to other restaurants. This location becomes available. You know, I know there was a lot of folks who had owned it before. There was mismanagement. You know, just they owed a lot of money. But what ultimately makes you pull the trigger and say, okay, fine, I'll buy into this comedy club. This is the thing that's going to save me after everything that you said, which is totally contrary, that you don't want to be involved in comedy.
Okay. When this place was still open, they were so broke they have to look for new partners. So the broker get me into a meeting with the owner at that time, and I look at the numbers that day, and I look. You don't look at the operating statement and decide whether you're going to buy the business or not. You look at the balance sheets. I look at the balance sheets and said, they owe $50,000 today, and they want $50,000 to buy into half the club. So at that point, I told my partner, Jim Myers, I said, you know what? Don't put a dime in, sit still, it's going to open up. And sure, 3 months later, they were gone. And then I went to the landlord and said, let's talk about putting a new place in. And then because of my resume, I run bar and restaurant for many years at that time. And then I have connection with comedy. So I said, well, I can put the package together. And in the back of my mind was, well, I better come up with something new. But I didn't tell the owner at that point.
Absolutely. Well, you did. You did end up in the business of comedy once again. You did come up with something new, but it was not an easy journey. It was not a overnight success by any means for a lot of the things you talked about. But there were comics, and you were very deliberate early on about bringing in comics who were something different, who weren't necessarily, like you said, the same old thing that people had seen. And so I would like to take this opportunity to bring up our first guest of the evening, who is one of those comics, one of the longest tenured Acme comics. You know him from Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know him as the director of the movie I Need You to Kill. Ladies and gentlemen, J. Elvis Weinstein. Have a seat.
I think I speak for the entire audience when I say,
Don't worry, we're gonna get to the gross part soon. You'll be fine. All right.
it's amazing what you've done, Lewis, especially with no charisma at all. Sorry.
All right, so let's talk about it. You know, Elvis and I, we've known each other for some time. How do you guys meet? How does this relationship start?
I was a 16-year-old comic at the Comedy Gallery, and he was the 20-some-year-old bartender at the Comedy Gallery, who kindly fed me liquor.
Wait, am I hearing that Louis Lee, owner of Acme Comedy Company, known for serving children?
Yeah, no, literally, at a certain point, I would get off stage and they'd hand me a cup of scotch on the rocks and a coffee cup.
What kind of 16-year-old drinking scotch on the rocks?
3 years sober.
68 years old, trapped in a 16-year-old's body. Incredible.
Well, who cards a 16-year-old who orders Club Med? Little trick, Mike.
So then Josh, so when you hear, you know, you're in the scene, you're working Comedy Gallery, you knew Louis through there. So when you first hear, hey, Louis Lee's opening a comedy club, what do you think? From your relationship with Louis to that point, I mean, what goes through your mind when you first hear about this?
It was probably something like, oh, fuck. Just because this space had become sort of a dead spot in the interim between being it was the Rid Tickler, and then Scott Hansen fucked it up for a couple of years. And then Louis came in and fixed it. But, it was, when he opened it was right at the time I was like about to leave town to move to Los Angeles. So I was kind of wrapped up in my own thing. It was more when he invited me to come back to headline like a year later that I started to really feel the scene. You know? I mean, I was rooting for him completely. I loved this, but it was, I was leaving.
Sure. And Louis, so I mean, you mentioned, you know, that there were comics and there was things you wanted to see. You wanted to do things differently. What was it about J. Elvis Weinstein that you're like, this is a guy who Weinstein. So, see, okay.
It's especially important to point it out.
Okay. So far, for those of you keeping track at home, I've done an Asian voice and I've done something anti-Semitic. So we're doing really good so far. Great. No, I was going to say.
Back in the day, we did the Asian voice a lot.
Back in the day, back in the green room like 15 minutes ago. What are you talking about back in the day?
Can't do vote test.
So Louis, I was going to say, though, I mean, what is it about Josh that makes you say, yes, this is the type of comic I want to bring into the club? I know you're not really booking when he starts coming back, but what is it that makes you call him and say, yes, this is the type of comic I want for Acme?
He'll work for $1,200.
Yeah. He always is a really, really good writer. So, and you know, those days, most comics have 1 hour and they live off that forever.
Right.
And Josh, on the other hand, you keep creating, you know, you keep writing, so it's the
It's
difference.
all one, long flat line. But
Yeah. Well, you know, after you move out and get a real job out there.
yeah, it was funny because like you could write 2 jokes a week and be like the most prolific guy in town,
Yeah.
and then you have to go write 100 jokes a day in Hollywood
Right.
on a TV show. So it changed my perspective on it.
Right.
So then, Josh, on the flip side, you know, you said to me when we were talking for this book that this was affectionately, you called it a B room. And you knew it was a B room the first time you came back.
Yeah.
What is a B room, for the record? For those who don't know, what is a B room?
It's versus an A room. So it is, at that time, the Comedy Gallery was the A room. In 80s comedy parlance, that means they brought in comics who had Tonight Show credits, HBO credits. Lewis would bring in A&E credits. Seriously, that's what it was. And it is. I mean, honestly, it's you get what you pay for situation a lot of the time. But there were some gems among the lower priced road guys that that was your initial kind of basis for finding the good B room guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lewis, I mean, all jokes aside, I mean, was there some truth to the idea of, hey, look, these are the guys that we can kind of get right now, let's pick the best of them? Or, I mean, even if it wasn't, if you had, unlimited finances and things, is Josh the type of writer, of comic that you were interested in even that early on?
That's uncomfortable.
Kiss!
Well, actually, those days it wasn't my idea. It was Becky,
It was
right?
Becky
Yep.
Johnson, who was the first person to actually make me, when I was 17, a headliner on the road in North Dakota.
Right. So,
My parents loved that shit. My Jewish mother went nuts over it. Especially when I dropped out of college to mock movies with a fucking puppet. She loved that.
Mrs. Weinstein came around, though. I've made up for it. All right. So Josh, then, I mean, you're coming back here, though, on a pretty regular basis. At what point, though, along the journey, do you start to say, oh, this is something, this is special, this is different? I mean, do you realize that early on, or does it take a few years? Does it take a few visits?
It seems like it took under 10 years, but getting up close to 10 years to be a really like hot, great room, like where you notice like this is a great fucking room. It was probably 10 years almost.
yep.
And what, I mean, for you specifically, I mean, especially having been on the road and seen what A rooms and B rooms look like, what were some of those characteristics? I mean, what did you start to see that really stuck out to you?
Well, I mean, part of it is just that Lewis has always made this room about comedy, as opposed to appetizers. There's a lot of comedy clubs who are in the chicken wing business, and they do it through putting some poor sap up on stage. But that's the business there. And Lewis has always been in the comedy business. I mean, he silently he's in the bar business, but spiritually, you've always been in the comedy business, and you've always made it a priority that the thing happening in the showroom is the thing. The show is the thing, and we're going to do everything we can to support it, and that means a wait staff that is excellent and ninja-like and managers who get on top of trouble super quickly. It's not just one person. It's an ethos of the club, which is the thing that's happening on stage is very important, and it's the center of our world too.
Absolutely. And Lewis, question for you. I talked to a lot of comics while I was writing this book, and I know that in 30 plus years, booking comics, it's give and take. So some comics, they just don't get booked after a while, and it's not necessarily because of something specific. It's just they don't fit the culture. They aren't writing something new. They're not creative. Josh is somebody you've been bringing back since the beginning.
It's uncomfortable again. It's pity, okay? No, but the truth is that there were years where I was writing TV full time, and this would be my only gig of the year. Like Lewis would let me come back, and I'd be panicking when I came back because I hadn't done stand-up for like a year, and he'd just be like, "Just be good by Saturday."
So, I mean, Lewis, to you, and I mean, I'm using Josh as my example, but I mean, what keeps you bringing back some folks who've been coming to this club for 30 plus years? I mean, what is it specifically? I mean, other than blackmail?
Well, okay. When he first, come in the early 90s, he doesn't really, he was leaving. And then as soon as he landed in LA, not too long after that, he started to write TV shows. So at that point, he doesn't need to work here, but he chooses to work here. So at that point, you have to appreciate he still have the passion for stand up. And I really like that. And, you know, even today, when you come and visit me, you say, come on, pick a week.
I did. I picked a week today. I wasn't
Yep.
going to do a week this year.
Yep.
I'm not in June. Come on the second day.
Incredible. All right, so Josh, we can all stop hugging here for 5 minutes because I really wanted to ask you. You've been here so many times. You've done so many different weeks. You've been a part of this history. What if you have to pick one Acme memory? What stands out to you most when you think of this club? What's the thing that jumps out to you as like, remember that time? ...
Well, there's a couple. There's two. The biggest one is going to Asia with Lewis and making a documentary about Chad Daniels and Pete Lee and Tom Segura touring Asia. That's a pretty indelible memory. My favorite, and I think it made the book, was maybe about year 7 of the club. I'm here, still beer room, and I had brought my new wife, my new stepson, my mother, and my grandmother all to the show. And they're sitting over here. This section over here is a biker game. And it was a rough night, and they were causing a lot of noise, and it started to get fucking tense. And my mom was shitting herself. That was enough for me to enjoy the evening. But then it was just like I finally went, okay, and I started addressing the bikers directly, and I found what appeared to be the leader. And I what's your name? He's like, light bulb. And I said, I'm guessing that's not because you had a good idea. And it turned on completely. They were sending me shots on stage. And I was like a hero to my new child and my wife and my mother.
Incredible. Well, Josh, thank you. I know that you mean so much to the club. You mean so much to Lewis. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for doing so much for me, for being a part of this book. We really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Weinstein. All right. Well, coming up next here, we have another comic who's been a part of this club for a very, very long time, and in my opinion, makes the least business sense when it comes to booking comics. And I'll explain shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next guest, Mr. Tim Slagle. The mayor is gone, right? Like, we're 100%. All right. You can have the mic now.
How many books did you sell, your first one?
I don't know, 20, 30, I don't know.
You're criticizing my business.
I know. I'm not criticizing your business. I'm criticizing your business. No, okay, so Josh, here's the reason why I say, or Josh, you're not Josh, you're Tim. Tim, here's the reason I say that. As the story goes, and I want to confirm it here tonight, you have the record for the most walkouts in any Acme show in history. Is that true?
Might be for North America. Well, at least I know it's the record for North America and getting booked back the following year.
So how does one walk an entire room of people who have paid their money to come to a show to make them say, you know what, I'll just go home, it's fine? How do you do it?
Sucked pretty bad. But what happened was, it was after the Wellstone plane crash. Too soon? And those who remember, this is probably even more somber. They nominated Walter Mondale to fill in. And everybody thought it was like a shoe-in. And if you remember, there was like a big rally. And it was supposed to be a funeral, but it turned into a rally. But anyway, the week before I was here, I think there was a special show. Who's at the special show list? Do you remember? You did one of your theater events, and I emceed it.
Penn Oswald and Dave Attell.
Yeah, it was a killer show. And I had a line I tried out at that show on the Sunday before my week was, when you nominated Mondale, I said what I think everybody said was, isn't he dead too? And it killed on Sunday. But then that rally happened. That was a rally. I don't remember. But by Tuesday, it was pretty certain that Mondale was going to lose more spectacularly than he did the first time around. And that's how quiet it got.
I love that it still got groans all these years later. That's a timeless joke. That's what that means.
Is the mayor still here? I guess not. It's kind of dangerous riding your bicycle after dark. Fucking limo drivers from doing circles. There's no fucking parking.
Okay.
There's no fucking parking in this neighborhood.
So Lewis, okay. This is what I'm talking about right here, okay? You're at a point in your life, business-wise, you owe all this money, you need this business to work. You got Tim walking crowds out of your room, and you're like, yeah, that's a guy I should keep bringing back in here. Why? Why do you do that? What's the logic in your mind? Why do you keep bringing Tim back?
Remember I said earlier, you have to do something different?
A bold strategy.
Okay, that week, he walked 250. Following week,
Well, I might add there were 275 in the room. When
Right.
I fully walked 90% of the room. And the 25 that left just said, this is getting good.
So, but I mean, the idea that you do, and again, I'm joking, but the idea that you are letting comics like Tim, keep expressing themselves, keep making jokes that maybe not everybody's excited about and comfortable with when you're trying to build a business. I mean, what's the thought process for you as a comedy guy, as an arts guy?
okay, at that point, the following week, another comic was here, and his name is Doug Stanhope.
Yes.
And he only walked 100.
Rookie.
So at that point, I know I have something that not everybody like. And at that point also, it tells me that if I work harder and keep finding different comics every week, of course, I would never put Tim and Stanhope back to back again.
Hard to make payroll that month. Can I say something here? And at that point in comedy, what everybody else was doing around the country was so much different. Everybody was putting comedians up that were crowd pleasers. So it was variety acts, it was ventriloquists, it was magic acts, there's a couple magic acts and ventriloquists in the room, so I should shut up. but they're good ones, guitar acts. I mean, it was Hack City and all the comedy clubs. Lewis created alternative comedy.
All right, so speaking of alternative comedy, not that story notwithstanding, there's another legend. It's about you, and it's about I'll say it falls in the alternative comedy category. A stunt you used to pull on stage that became so notorious that Lewis said to me, his exact words to me were, it killed his career. What was that stunt all about, Tim?
I thought it was the escalator to the stardom. It was a magic trick. And what I would do is I would come on stage and talk flag burning was a big thing at the point. And I had a lunchbox, a black lunchbox that matched my leather jacket at the time. And I would open the lunchbox and I would reach in there as I was talking about flag burning and pull out a little tiny novelty flag. And it's okay, made in China. But it's only got 47 stars and 14 stripes. So it's not a real American flag, it's the official Tim Slagle burnable flag. And I would pull out a big lighter. There's that sound again. And then I lifted up, I had like a little easel in the lunchbox and pulled it up and there was a Bill of Rights there. And I would say, this is what makes this country great. This is what people have died for. This is what we need to support, because if you destroy this and then the victory would light the flag, or the light the Bill of Rights. It was made out of flash paper, so it would just be just a fireball. And at the moment that caught fire, this flag in my hand over here would disappear.
Also, somebody started clapping like 8 seconds too soon. Over here, they were like, hell yeah, oh no! I like that, that's great.
So it'd be 2 big fireballs, and it was a couple weeks after I started doing it, it was like across the entire, Slagle burning a flag on stage, and they're picturing me taking a full flag, a full off a flagpole, 8 by 10, setting on fire and setting off the smoke alarms and sprinklers and tar balls shooting everywhere. And he's not doing it in my club. And the comedian would go, yeah, I don't think he should. What week was he booked? I got that one open.
So Lewis, you hear about Tim's out here burning flags on stage, and you're still like, yeah, I want to go see this one. How does that come about? What did you hear about it first and foremost as a club owner, and what do you think the first time you see it?
I was told when he called, I think Becky at that time, and told Becky, the lady that booking the club at that time, about that bit. And to me, it was like, okay, I like to see that. And something different, right? So if you really, he described it 100% true. Once you see it, actually how it happens, and what his point of, is that, okay, nothing wrong with it. So that's why I keep doing it every year, sometimes twice a year.
Yeah, I was here twice a year.
Yeah, so.
It was, Lewis, we tell me, it's, I bring in Slagle for diversity.
True.
Thank God there were no other comedians of my political slant back then. I cornered the market.
Incredible. So, to switch gears for just a second, Tim, there's another story that I want to ask you about. And this one did not make the book, but I think it's a fascinating story, and I'm always really interested in hearing it. You have had some pretty big moments at this club, but you had a really big personal moment at this club.
Yeah.
And it happened here, in part because of Acme, because of Lewis. I won't ruin it. I'll let you kind of take it.
Yeah, and I'm really bummed because at this point I was going to drag her up on stage, but she couldn't make it. She was feeling a little sick. So Lewis's wife at the time she found a lost brother that she knew she had but she never met, and she found him and they met and the experience was so wonderful. She decided that would be her mission in life, is to reunite lost families. And so she started bugging Lewis, tell Slagle I want his stuff. Tell Slagle I want, I'm adopted. I was adopted at birth, so I didn't, no connection with the family whatsoever. And Lewis said, Kelly wants your birth certificate. It's not on my birth certificate. But I think I got papers. Well, give them to me. So I got them to her, and she took my baptismal name on my baptismal certificate. Was able to run through the phone book. It's a book about that. and she was able to find, like, there were like 5 in the area where I grew up, and she called them all, and son of a gun, the day she found somebody, said, I think I know who you're talking about, and she found my mom. And my birth mom married my birth dad, and I had 5 full sisters that I had fortunately never met before. Because we get along really well. And if we had not known, it might have been really ugly. Because they were hanging out in the same bars that I was doing comedy in Detroit. And she showed me a picture of my 5 sisters, and it was like, no. One, though, used to work at Josh will know this, it was a Yoder gig in Kalamazoo, Michigan at a Hilton. And it was her job every Sunday morning to get the drunken comedians out of the hotel room. And that was my sister's job. Yeah, and we think we met. We don't remember it. But anyway, so that never. So anyway, mom actually, it was like when she found out about me, like 2 weeks later, I was here, and she called and she said, "Fuck it, I'm coming to Minneapolis immediately." So we actually had a reunion right here. That's my family now. The family I was raised with 2 adopted sisters, 1 adopted brother, and I was the normal one. I've got 1 sister that lives in the house with 5 pigs. I've got another sister that has had more divorces than the country top 40. And my brother, everyone was very surprised to learn, was not the Unabomber. But it's the weirdest thing. The family, I fit right in it. And one friend said to me, the mom who raised me at her funeral, my dad had passed earlier, and then at my mom's funeral, she said, "God, must be so cool to have a spare family in the trunk." And it really has been. I mean, that's where I spend my holidays. That's where she's. And this is the freakiest thing. Okay, I never met any of them. My dad was a stand-up comedian. Honest to God, we actually knew comedians the same. There were comedians that knew both of us, and county chair of the Libertarian Party. So we had friends in both the Libertarian Party and in stand-up comedy that did not know that, and we didn't know. We never met, but.
Incredible. Unbelievable. Tim, thank you. I mean, in all seriousness, I think you're one of the most interesting, the funniest, I always love talking with you. You played such a huge role in making this book possible, and I can't thank you enough. And you've made such a huge impact. You guys know the book's available in the lobby after the show. But Tim, thank you.
If you just want to read chapter 6, timslagle.com/6.
Incredible. Tim, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Tim Slagle. All right, we're going to keep this party going because, we've talked to Josh, we talked to Tim, and we've talked a lot about, some of those comics who were here right from the beginning. And I know as time went on, Louis, you really had people who really found this club as a place to start their comedy careers. These were folks who had been in comedy, but the next group we're going to be up are people who really kind of got the opportunity to learn comedy, to get nurtured in comedy, and to grow into what they become today. And I don't think there's any better examples of these folks than the next two comics I'm going to bring to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chad Daniels and Cy Amundson.
I've had sex with 3 of Tim's 5 biological sisters. Now, this was before we knew about the adoption. Figuring out how to white out my name off the proclamation.
It's amazing that they got the whole speech I gave at the city council meeting. They got me out of that one sheet of paper. He's still here. Is Jacob the sort of mayor who gives one of those and then stays for the show?
It was Mayor Jacob Fly until Lewis said it. Oh man, I just thought of that one. That was... I bring that up. I started doing stand-up comedy here, and I didn't see Lewis for the first several years because he doesn't talk to the underlings. But he let me. I don't know if you remember. Of course you do, because I've told you this story a million times. But he let me headline. He let me try headlining here on Tuesday. And I thought it went great. And I was sitting in the back in the green room, and Lewis opened the door and he peeked his head around and he said, "Chuck Daniel, you know headliner." And then he left. And he didn't tell me he was kidding for 2 weeks. So I thought the whole time, I'm like, well, that was my shot, but it was a Tuesday. Now, Lewis tells the story that he came here to go to college. But I'm friends on social media and even in real life with your son. And I had him get a hold of your diary. From the last night in Hong Kong. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art and everybody knew their part. From the feint to a slip, kicking from the hip. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Huh. Those cats were fast as lightning. fact, it was a little bit frightening. I think I'll move to America.
Thank you for that. I seem a little off. I thought this was a book about exposing some of the predatory behavior Lewis has committed.
Huh.
When Patrick reached out, I thought this was a gathering of survivors. To tell their stories. And,
Show us on the proclamation where you touched them.
I just feel like I'm letting it, I don't have any, I just feel like I'm letting everybody down with that. I mean, I can just read the letter. Without reading, I guess. I am so proud and honored to be here today to speak on behalf of the many, many, many victims of Lewis Weinstein. It's so hard to believe that a place of laughter and joy to so many on the outside would hold such dark sexual secrets. Never when I first stepped on stage with dreams of fame and fortune did I believe I would become a pawn in the power game of an erotic manipulator who would let nothing stand between him and his desire to control people in an attempt to finish. I know a lot of you who haven't been victims are maybe asking why have you not spoken until now? Well, I confronted Lewis once in the past, and I said, why do you do this, Lewis? Why do you hurt these young men? And he looked into my eyes and said, I would never hurt anyone, rink, rink. I said, are you saying rink? And he said, yeah, a rink. A rink, rink. I said, why are you saying it? Why wouldn't you just wink? He said, I don't know how to rink. My grandfather never taught me how to rink. I thought, why would you have your you know, I can't focus on that. What I need to focus on is in September of 2013, when the I Need You to Kill documentary was in Macau, Singapore, and as you know, Lewis, Hong Kong. The 8 Asian boys that went missing during this time. And I've been asked by my friends in council to not list their age, but I do want you to know that it rhymes with Dorteen. I said, what did you do? What did you do to those 14-year-old boys? He said I was on vacation, rink, rink. Now, many of you have seen the video of me in a child's Aaron Rodgers jersey performing oral sex on a banana. That Lewis won as a part of a bet. And many of you probably believe it was a sports gamble. But none of you realize the bet he offered with me at this. I'm sorry. The bet he offered me, and I quote, was, "Oh, I bet you suck this banana's dick if your life will depend on immense amount of respect for Lewis, which is difficult because of what he's done to me. Kind of makes me hate myself. But it's impressive. You know, this club has managed to maintain its artistic integrity despite the behavior of its owner. Just think about it for a second. We just watch him get a day named after this club. It's amazing to me that this club is both run by a predator, but there's also a place you'd never ever see Chris D'Elia perform. Thank you for your concern. I want everybody to know I feel safe right now.
The truth is that.
You go.
My thing?
You go.
Okay. Here's the truth. The truth is, I wanted to do stand-up comedy since I was a little boy. Okay. I went down to a club that he owned with Scott Hansen before Scott Hansen fucked him over. It was the River Center Comedy Gallery. And I saw a guy who's here tonight in the back. His name is John DeBoer. And he caused so much joy in that room that I thought, God damn, can people do this? And I go, that's what I would like to do. I mean, I saw John and I go, it's gettable, right? And not in any way like, oh, if you can fucking do it. That's not what I mean. It was just so, it was just like the passion that he had was contagious. And so then a long time after that, I came here, did open mic, ate shit, came back 6 months later, ate shit again, but I was like, I like this. And kept going, and he has helped me the whole way through. Now, not just in stand-up. I got a million questions. I did, this is gonna sound a little like, not fluffy to myself, but I have one of the best agencies in the world, one of the best management companies in the world, and when I filmed a special last year, first guy I called was him. Because he makes shit happen, he knows the scene more than anybody. He's fair, he's honest, and he gets it done. And so I went to him first. I didn't even call the other people that are involved in my career. When I got divorced, which was his suggestion for material, I remember, I said, I don't feel inspired. He said, have kids. I did that. I got married. And he's like, oh, fuck, I guess get a divorce. Your marriage stuff is funny, but oh, shit. Divorce is gold, my friend. And after that, I said, I'm still feeling uninspired. I go, what could I possibly write about now? And he goes, let me make a call. And then 2 months later, COVID. Or as we come to know the China virus. Now, I got divorced, 2 kids, moved into a house, and was like kind of nervous about all that shit. And I called Lewis because he has kids around the same age as my kids. And I go, dude, what? I mean, it's like fucking nonstop. I gotta rein it in. He goes, all right, sat down with me. I don't even remember this. You took an hour on the phone, and you go, make sauces, make soups, make stuff you can freeze. So all you have to do is take it out, put it on the stove, let it cook. Then you'll have more time to do the other shit. He has not only been a comedy mentor to me, but he has been such a great fucking friend. And there is absolutely no way I have the life I have right now without Lewis. And to let you know how heartfelt of a man he is, I just said I love you, and he said thanks.
That's why in the back goes, oh, I'll do mine, and then you do yours. Yeah, that's how it usually works, following Chad Daniels.
I mean, I think like everybody you know, it's not unique to Chad and I. We could sit up here and tell a Rolodex of stories and moments where you said something that you probably thought wasn't a big deal, and then we treated it like that movie where they drop a Coke bottle on the island and we're like, it's God now. I know we've had a weird life to this point. This has kind of always been a place to come back to. I mean, when I first got sick and we didn't know I was sick, the only thing I could do for exercise was walk stairs, and I think that's one of the things that kept me from putting a gun or a samurai sword in my mouth. Harry Carey in his tradition. And they had a shower back there that shouldn't be legal to have. I would walk the stairs every day. Like, not open mic day, but Tuesdays in the middle of the afternoon, and I'd come shower in there. And no one ever made me feel weird about that. They talk shit behind my back. But in these weird moments in a very weird life, as you said, this place is a home, and it's not a home because of, we all talk about, you guys are great, you guys come, but it all starts with you, and I could say a lot of really nice things about that. And I think we're talking about comedy, and we're talking about the books. I'm going to tell one story that you might think is not a big deal, but it, to me, is the perfect story. So, we were doing, what was it called?
Punchline Punch Out.
Punchline Punch Out. So we're doing Punchline Punch Out. We convinced Lewis, we're like, let us bring a bunch, it was Andy Erickson and Trevor Anderson's show. They built it. We just aped it, like pieces of shit. Yeah, so what it is each night you go up and you perform, you get a night, so the night before, each of our teams, each of the contestants would get a word, like garbage. One guy from each team. So the next night, we have to write 5 brand new minutes about garbage, go up on stage, we both do the 5 minutes, and then afterwards, we, crowd votes or whatever it was. And it was one of the nights, and, Lewis is always willing to let us do these things and have weird shows. That's why Slagle gets to do his show every year. And the second or third night, it was Chad versus Brooks, and the word was fire, right? Fire, yeah. And Brooks took that as fire. And so Brooks came on stage, and he said, it's really hard to get fired from here. And he hardly ever heard of anybody who did. And the 2 stories that he heard was somebody got naked on stage and somebody took drugs on stage. So Brooks, in a full crowd, took a full bag of mushrooms, and then put his phone up to the microphone and started playing a beatbox song and slowly started undressing. Snail's pace? Fucking slow. Piece by piece, sock, all the way down to his underwear. He did the funniest thing I've ever seen, where the whole crowd was going, he's not going to do it, is he? And he teased and showed just his pubes. We're like, oh God, he's not going to do it. And then he pulled his pants off and helicoptered his dick on this stage. And I've never, the reaction in the crowd, I've never been a part of anything like that in my life. And he got off stage, and I went and watched him try to puke up the mushrooms. And all I could think was we're in so much fucking trouble. First of all, everybody's gonna complain. You can't get away with that. And so I called the next day, and it was Thursday was the next day, and I called Lewis. I don't know if you remember this at all, but I called you, and I said, hey, something happened last night. This is a whole conversation. He goes, what is it? And I go, Brooks went on stage, he took his dick out, helicopter, mushrooms. And then I kind of sat in silence for a second, and he goes, was he trying to be funny? And I said, yeah. He goes, okay. And that was it. I'm going to tell you, that doesn't exist, and even in the best clubs, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist anywhere. That staunch desire for the artist to be able to make the thing they think is funny, even if it's hacky in the moment, shitty in the moment, bad in the moment. We can talk about everything in this book and but that's the thing. Your willingness
ladies and gentlemen, Chad Daniels and Cy Amundson. Well, shit. I don't know. What do you want to do now? Incredible. All right, I don't know how we follow that. See, and you guys got weird when I kind of made a little bit of an Asian accent, but here we are. All right, I do want to keep this going though, and there is another person here who I really want to chat with because, as these guys talked about, you played such a big role in a lot of comics, kind of understanding the scene, but also in general in their personal lives. And this next person I have, she's very funny. She's one of my favorite people, and she was here. She's been here more than 20 years. And I'm very excited to have her back on the stage here tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for Maggie Ferris. Maggie. There she is. All right. Have a seat.
Okay.
Maggie,
Yeah.
first thing, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Congrats on your book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Maggie, you and I, we talked a lot about the club. We talked a lot about Lewis.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that you said, and a lot of other comics did this too, but you said it very point blank, and that's why I wanted to bring you out here tonight.
Okay.
You said, when I first started doing comedy, there was a rule that you don't talk to Lewis Lee.
Yeah, no, you don't talk to Lewis.
And that he had this presence where if you talked to him, it was going to be a whole thing. So what was the rule? Just so I'm clear on it.
First of all, there were so many rules starting here, but they were all like necessary and good, and you just learned everything about comedy with all those rules, But one of the rules is you don't talk to Lewis. You wait until you're funny enough for Lewis to approach you and say, "You want to work a week?" Yeah.
Lewis, let's settle this once for all. Is this true? Did you make these rules? Are these is this like an urban legend that's been passed down the years, or did you kind of like having this fear from the comics?
No, actually, I was running an open mic at that point. So if I started to talk to open micer, the rest of the people would think, what do I have to do to talk to Lewis? Maybe this person will get booked. So I will make the whole scene really ugly really fast. So by not talking to anybody because I watch every show, when I know that they're ready, I approach them and ask them, would you like to work a week and start emceeing here? So the whole point is get the politics out of it right off the bat. Because if I pick and choose and talk to people, is that, hey, keep coming back, the rest of the people is that, what the hell's going on?
Talk to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's 50 people that don't make it on the list that are in the back trying to get his attention too. And so, you learn to get his attention by being funny and tight and doing a killer 3 minutes, and that was what you did.
Sure. Now, but you did say, Maggie, that once you were in, then it was a different ball game.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you said Lewis, he was a part of the party. Is that what I understand? Is this correct?
There were some nights we had some good times that lasted into times that weren't night anymore. Yes. We had a great time.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember these? And I'm asking do you have a fond memory? Do you actually mentally remember these nights, Lewis? How big of a party are we talking about?
On the weekends.
For sure.
Yeah.
We would sit somewhere and we would drink and smoke and tell stories and laugh. And comics are silly. They're always trying to compete for the funny, and so you're one-upping each other and you're telling a better story. But they're very entertaining and you learn so much from talking to all the comics. But Lewis was right there and he was a blast to talk to, We had a great time.
Did he hold his own?
Oh, yeah.
I can't even tell you a lot of the things that Lewis would say. Lewis would have a couple of drinks and then he'd say, Maggie Ferris loved pussy.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Several Thanks for booking the queers. But yeah, I mean, he was the gang. He was part of the gang. We all hung out, you know? It was fun.
And Louis, for you, I mean, being a part of this, I know that, early on, and we talked about this in the book too, really being part of a community, being accepted in things, obviously you're very smart and you're very deliberate about keeping business and personal apart, but I mean, it's got to feel like, hey, maybe you have found a community of people. Like, do you feel connected to these comics on a personal level? I mean, what's your personal feelings at this point?
Okay, personal is personal. We can always have fun, but when it comes to business, we have to look at it totally different. The reason why the club exists is so that you and the rest of the comics have a stage to play, and hopefully you help each other out, and then move on. Yeah, I like to see everybody spend a few years here and move and do much bigger and bigger things.
Well, it was such an ideal arena because number one, this is like the best room to do comedy, and there's just something magical about the low ceilings and the carpets and the crowd. The crowd that comes here loves comedy. They're not like the mall crowd. They're like, let's go see a show, like we love comedy. So this is just there's a magical energy in here, and for Louis to have somebody where you can, test the limits, like they're talking about that Brooks show, I mean, that's just mind-blowing to let people, go over the line to find out where that line is and come back. And I mean, I remember sitting in the bar watching when Slagle was here, and we'd just be like, oh, look, 2 more left. Oh, look, 10 more left. Holy shit, what's he saying now? Oh my God, look at that whole bus left. It was entertaining because he allowed a place for you to grow and learn and figure out your craft and I mean, it's just such a magic place to do that.
And Maggie, you said another thing to me when we were talking. You talked about the comics who you got paired up with at this club, who you would open for, you'd MC for, you'd feature for. And on paper, you'd look at these and you were like, this is not somebody that I think I should open for. It makes sense for me. And you told me that it turned out that those were some of the best experiences you had. I mean, who were some of those people first and foremost?
Okay, I got paired up with Stanhope, and I come in as a radical militant lesbian feminist, and his closer at the time was to take a beer bottle and shake it up like his dick was coming and hitting the ceiling, right? And I was like, fuck no, you can't put me with him. I was terrified, But Stanhope turned out to be like one of the nicest, kindest, sweetest people. Taught me so much about comedy, and sure, he's gross or whatever, but he's a funny motherfucker. And I don't know, his pairing, how he came up with pairing and stuff. I mean, I do remember when I worked here, he had a formula for I couldn't MC right away because I was such a character. And so he would have me co-feature because I didn't have enough time to feature. And then after I kind of developed after a while, then I started to MC as well. So he had a very interesting way. I remember working with Fred Caliendo. I was so excited to work with Fred. I'm like, oh my God, have you seen this man? He's amazing, he's amazing. He didn't say one word to me the whole week. He wouldn't even fucking talk to me or look at me. And I was like, well, he's a dick. I don't know. So you just never know by their act, how they're gonna be. It is such a character up there. But to work with Doug and have him be just such a genuinely lovely human being was a great surprise, and that's another lesson learned in comedy,
So Louis, then, I mean, what is the rationale? Because I've heard multiple comics talk to me about, I got paired up with this person, and they really gave me a lot of education. I mean, is this intentional when you see these opportunities to put people together? Are you like, hey, this is good for the Maggie Ferrises, for the Pete Lees, for the whomever the case is? Or, I mean, what's going through your mind when you decide who needs to open these shows for some of these names?
Normally, I try to book somebody not exactly opposite, but it's not the same act with the headliner, because if your feature do the job that get a crowd really going in a way that set up the headliner, and you can have somebody in the middle do almost the same thing as headliner. That's why, you're perfect with Stanhope. In a way,
See, I got to open for Joey Coco Diaz. Same fucking play. And that was really weird too because they really liked me and clearly I'm very dykey. And then he went up there and he was, telling gay jokes and shit. And they were like, well, wait a minute, but we liked her. And I don't get it.
yeah. The whole thing is that give the audience a challenge, so they have a complete experience. As that, okay, here is a comedy show. You don't sit through the same thing. You go. The MC will warm up the car a little bit, which is the hardest part.
For sure.
And then the feature come in, and they have a stronger character. But the headliner, the headliner is going to have a completely different. So you set up the whole experience. You sit through the hour and a half, and you have experience. Versus the biggest downfall of the 90s was, or the 80s was, almost everybody sang the same all the time. So that's my whole thing. And when I, back in my mind, I say, I have to do something different, once again, that's it.
Well, you did such a good job of allowing the differences, and allowing people to grow and allowing people to have very different opinions and styles and stuff like that. It was just such a great environment for that.
Awesome. Well, Maggie, you're one of my favorites. I know that you are somebody that everybody loves to have everywhere, and I am so excited to still have you here tonight and have you be a part of this event. But Louis, I want to know, would you say it like one more time, just like for the sake of it? I mean, like Maggie Ferris, does she love?
What do I love, Louis?
What does she love?
I
mean, what? I don't know. What do you think Maggie Ferris loves?
Sounds like a kitty cat. Sounds like meow meow.
Nope.
He's not going to do it. All right.
Sure, Maggie Ferris is not a pussy.
Out there. Maggie Ferris, everybody. Oh, man. We've reached the after dark portion of the evening. This is great. Now we're just going for it. All right, we're almost done here, guys. We got a few more people that I really want to bring up. And one thing I want to talk about real quick, because I know that this has been another institution in this club for a long time, and that is the Funniest Person Contest. A lot of us, myself included, have been a part of that contest, and it's developed some of the most incredible talents that have come out here. And it's also showed me some of the grossest, cringiest, bad comedy I've ever seen. So I think it really is the best of both worlds. And so the next person I want to bring out is somebody who is a former winner of the Funniest Person Contest. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Harmston. Everybody's getting drunk in the back. Everybody's coming from the back now. There he is. There he is.
Oh my God. Hey, look, just to set the record straight, what Cy Amundson said about Brooks Robinson. A lot of you probably don't know Brooks. He's like a GQ model. If I ever helicoptered my dong on this day, the Acme ticketing website would crash from people pounding the refund button. And I would never be hired again. So I just want to...
There's still time. There's still time. All right. Well, Tim, I wanted to bring you out here because what year was it that you won the contest?
2003, funniest person
There
in
it
the Twin
is.
Cities contest.
There it
Right
is.
here.
And
if you look at my bio, it says that's something I'll tell people when I'm an old man in a bar.
And here we are. There you go. But Tim, the reason I bring it up is because, I know a lot of people, they come here, they see the contest every summer, they see their friends, they see people win, and they're like, oh man, that guy won the contest, so he's the next big star at Acme. You won the contest, and then what happens?
I was in the contest with my wife. She's a comedian. Her name is Mary Mack. And yes, I was in the contest in 2003 with my wife, and I had my family here, and she had her family and friends here, and I won. And then after the show, one of her best friends came up and said, "You were fantastic. I'm really good friends with Mary Mack, and I said, "Oh, she's amazing. She should have gotten second." She finished third, but anyway, we ended up. So that was how we met. And then it just opened a lot of doors. So Louis didn't put me on stage for probably 6 months after that, because I think he really wanted to see how committed I was to this thing, and I respected that. So I kept coming to open mic on Tuesday nights and kept coming and working. And then I got the call. Louis called me. I was at the coffee shop writing jokes, and he said, "Would you like to do a week?" And so my first 3 weeks were Jim Gaffigan, Danny Bevins, and I think it was, who else was it? Daniel Tosh. Those were my first 3 weeks. Those were my first 3 weeks doing stand-up comedy professionally. And like Maggie said, we used to hang out after the show. So here I am hanging out with Jim Gaffigan, and we're having a few drinks after the show. And I realized that there's something special going on here. And then that was in 2003. And then but prior to that, just a little side story, I had heard about this, the comics I always talk about, this is pre-internet comedy, and we're like, "Have you heard of this Mitch Hedberg guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've heard of Mitch Hedberg." And so they said, "Are you going to the show?" I'm like, "What show?" They're like, "He's recording an album at Acme." So I ran down here and I got one of the last tickets, and I sat in the back row and I watched Mitch record Mitch Altogether. One of the great comedy albums of all time. And I think it's important when when you get your proclamation to put it in a historical perspective, that we've got First Avenue in Minneapolis, and we've got Acme Comedy Company, which is sort of the comedy, and so what happened to me, I just kept working. Louis was so kind and flexible with me. I had a day job where I had to travel, and so if I had a conflict, he would reschedule me, and I always appreciated that so much. And he kept putting me on stage, and eventually I became a professional stand-up comedian, and it just ended up being because of this place. And so I owe a lot to Louis, and thank you very much. And
Excellent.
appreciate it.
Amazing. And Louis, I'm curious because, the contest has been around as long as the club, and for you, has it always been something where you're like, this is how I'm going to find the next generation of comics, or has it been let's give these guys a look, let's give these folks a look? What's the contest meant to you as far as the growth and just kind of the overall culture here?
The contest, the whole idea is see who like to perform. And as they go along is see who is going to show up. Whether you win or not doesn't matter. See who's going to show up after the contest at open mic.
Yeah.
And
it takes a lot of commitment to do this, and I think the contest is sort of like the
give you a taste.
it's like the taste, and then it's the seeds that are planted, and then it's also it's also grown to where I don't know how many people sign up every year now, multiple hundreds of people. And so it's kind of like, as a young comedian, the contest was the big thing. Like you really wanted to win, and it provided motivation and writing your best 3 minutes. And if you're ever done stand-up comedy, 3 minutes feels like 3 hours when you come up here as an amateur. And it was great. And I did the exact same 3 jokes through all 4 rounds. And each round I'd take like one word out to make it tighter. I'd take like an or what about you guys? Or have you ever think about that before? I'd just take out one little thing and get it tighter. So by the time it was finals night, I got here and I thought, I'm gonna fucking crush this thing. And it was so great. And then of course I got the $1,000 check. You get $1,000, and to a loser like me at that time, that was party time, and it was like it was my rent. It was $1,000 rent for a month. So
Absolutely. Now, last thing before I let you go, Tim. you and Lewis have another type of relationship, which is a very toxic gambling relationship.
Yes.
And I would be
Yes, it
remiss
is.
if I didn't ask about this because
Yes.
I've heard a lot of gambling stories about Lewis and just horrible, horrible things that have happened to comics who have had the audacity to bet against him.
Okay.
And I'd like to hear your perspective on this.
Just to kind of color this story a little bit, a lot of people don't know this. Before the showroom in here, and Acme was just like 3 or 4 seats in the kitchen. It was like 3 or 4 seats and a couple tables in this like store where they store like the food and stuff. And then Lewis realized you needed financing, and so he realized that he could prey on vulnerable Viking fans. People that had optimism that he knew was sort of false optimism, and so he would prey on you, and it turned into be like a line of credit almost, where you could tap into it like a Chase Bank line of credit. You would just, and so you knew Lewis needed money if you got a text message, you know, hey, how many games do you think the Packers are gonna win? And then he would, and other comedy club owners from around the country were like, hey Lewis, how do you run such an awesome comedy club? And he would tell them, just prey on the local football. And so suddenly I would get text messages like, hey, it's Jim from the Comedy Cabinet in Manitoba. How many games do you think the Packers are going to win this year? And suddenly they have a flourishing. And so you sort of like a pioneer in preying on football fan bases that are also comedians. So pretty genius.
But Tim, you're one of the only ones, as I understand, who has beaten Lewis.
I have beaten Lewis. I've drank the sweet nectar of Patron tequila so many times. It just, I think we're about even over the years, but
Right.
But just a little side story. This last year I bet Lewis that the Packers would win 12 games. And so I was here New Year's Eve working, and it was the Saturday before the last game of the year. The Packers had won 11 games. They needed to win their 12th game against the Vikings or against the Bears on Sunday at Lambeau Field. So Lewis was like, let's just take the victory and take your tequila, and congratulations. And then the Packers blew it. They lost at home against the Bears, the bottom dwelling Bears. So I had to drive back that tequila. And I put it in a brown paper bag and said, this tequila is cursed. And I had to hand him a bottle of scotch. And so, but anyway, it's been a pleasure betting with you all.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, degenerate gambler and comedian Tim Harmston. Running away from it. This has disappeared. All right, we're going to keep it going. We have our last guest of the evening, our very last guest of the evening. He's one of my personal favorites, and his name is Greg Coleman. Welcome, Greg Coleman. Oh, man. Greg, welcome to the cleanup spot. Greg, I wanted you to be a part of this night for 2 reasons. Number one, you know, 3 reasons. Number one, you're very funny. You know who loves DE&I? Lewis Lee. You know, I really want to be here because, A, you're a very funny guy, but B, you know, you're somebody who I think came into this club when it was no longer trying to establish a reputation. It had that reputation already when you first got started here, and you've kind of become that next wave that's really carried that forward. And the other reason why I wanted to have you here is because when this club almost shut down during the pandemic, and they decided we're coming back, we're going to do this, the first comic that ever got back on this stage when they really didn't know there would ever be comedy here again was you. It was Greg Coleman. You were the first headliner to come back here. So all that is to say, what has it been like?
For that sudden wave.
What was it like for you, though? I mean, coming back here and being the first one up here and saying maybe comedy's going to be okay if I'm allowed to do comedy at Acme.
That shit felt good. It felt good. I was like, people willing to die for my dick jokes. Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, it was going to start back at some point. I was available. social media, and when we talked, I was like, oh yeah, safety concerns. But I never got COVID. Yeah, but no, it felt good. It felt nice to have the trust of the club. It felt kind of like the Tuskegee experiment. Like, let's see what happens before we bring the stocky back. Nah, honestly though, it felt good to feel trusted to try that.
Absolutely. And Louis, to talk about that period, for you, when you had the opportunity to start presenting live comedy again in the pandemic, when things were still very hit or miss, it was very touch and go here. I mean, was that something that you were always focused on, saying, yes, this club's been around, it's endured for so long, I'm going to keep it going? And at what point do you say, like, yes, this is worth me continuing on? I mean, is it when Greg gets back up here? Is it later on? I mean, when is that moment for you that kind of turns the corner?
Actually, at the beginning, between the first shutdown and the second shutdown, and we have riot all over, so they
Legend. I heard about a couple of them.
yeah, I know. You got curfew every other week on the weekend.
Yeah.
It never happened on like a Monday and Tuesday. It's always Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
So at one point, I said, I'm done. That's it. I'm going to fold it. I don't need this anymore.
Right.
So.
But then you remembered, I got Greg home. I'm sell 45 tickets this week to keep this motherfucker afloat.
But the day I decided okay, this is it, I went home. I looked at my daughter, and she was 19 at the time, and I said, hey, I'm done. I have enough. And she looked at me and she said, so we're going to lose our house. I said, no. I said, no, don't worry about it. I'm just done. I have enough of this. And she said, you always tell me don't give up. Things always goes wrong in life. And what makes you feel this is it? And I look at myself and said, yeah, I've been down so many times, and I'm not going to let this get done. And a couple things is, during the shutdown, comics actually come up one time, have nobody here, and we did a show, raise money. You guys raised money for yourself, and then somebody raised money for the staff. And I thought about it and said, okay, if everybody in this community work together, and I'm going to bail out right now, it's not good, because everybody works so hard up to a certain point. And Greg, you could easily use your talent, move a lot faster. I remember right before the COVID, the big time agency in LA called me asking about him. And they have everything. They want to send him out to New York to do showcase. And then the COVID hit, everything go away. And if I don't keep this club open, more and more, people like you cannot get recognized. So I have to. So after the talk with my daughter, I said, okay, fuck it, I'm going to do it again.
That's truly, yeah. Yeah, because it was a tough space, so there was ever no question about coming back if they asked. And you're available, not even available, to make yourself available and show up. And so I thank you for that.
Absolutely. I think we all thank you for that. And Greg, I appreciate you. I think you're one of the funniest guys here. I'm so happy that you are still here, that this club is still here, that you keep coming back. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Coleman.
I want to say it's amazing that you do continue to bring us back, and no matter what happens. And it's crazy to be here, a part of this, and seeing so many comic stories, and just hearing like, fuck, Tim Slagle has been walking motherfuckers since birth. God damn! So continue, keep it up. Thank you guys.
Louis, we did it. You made it through. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go, 2 quick things. First and foremost, for my housekeeping, there are books available in the lobby. I may have mentioned that. I'm going to sign books. Louis is going to come out there and sign books, whether he likes it or not. All the comics are going to be available after the show. But Louis, in all seriousness, for me personally, I don't speak for the club, I don't speak for the staff, I don't speak for the comics. I mean, for me personally, you didn't have to do any of this. You didn't have to share your story with me. You didn't have to share your story with everybody here tonight. You didn't have to keep this place going, and you chose to. And because of you, we are all so much better off. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen,